Horses and the God of Children by Russell Legaspi. No one else was at the beach except her. She opened a smile, and that was the signal to come over. There wasn't any particular thought that drove me here, only that it was time to meet her. Like how chess is played. Time is kept, pawns get sacrificed. She sat on the backrest of a bench under a coconut tree. She was clothed how a child would be playing outdoors, and smiled, kind of a smile that is both sunny and cloudy. I dropped my suitcase at the edge of the water and along a stone path to her. I muddled my thoughts with my steps. I knew who she was and what she meant. I have queries, demands most likely, a suitcase full, which may have been the case for my arrival on this island. Yet now any curiosity I have seemed to dissolve in the mixture of doubt and bland summer breeze. To meet her is to have 3 questions, and the 3 questions will be answered, but never questioned again. They prove like rules and must be followed. Such, I think, is the way of living. It was the only way to reach the other side of the island. On the other side of the island is where the visitors end up. A die from her tiny hand tumbled down and rolled 5. To me, whoever takes the first turn did not matter at all. Chess was a game of strategy, after all, a game of planning and foresight. I rolled 6. There lay my advantage. Everyone should know how to play chess, she said. I nodded, holding little experience of the game, then moved my ivory pawn in front of my king 2 squares in, opening up my queen and bishop for a diagonal preparation. She threw the timer into the water and offered it was best to play having time on our hands. Time is a gift and a curse, isn't it? She added. I was careful to keep any word from escaping my mouth, as this might result in an unwarranted question. Like good advice to a friend. She moved the horse on her right, an L in front of her pawn. I nodded again at her remark. Time moves in a straight line, I said, playing into her game of talk. Or moves like a pawn. This is fantastic, she answered. The curious thing about this island, no birds flew by, no seagulls gawked at the shores, and no rodents or monkeys climbed up and down trees. But there were noises and hums, echoes of what an island was. There were shrubs, mango trees, and sun stayed high with gentleness overhead. On the far end of the island where the sun would rest is a rain shaped as the sand of an hourglass, a continuous pouring from above, but only on that end. Waves crashed, yet the sea was calm. The wind blew, even then the trees remained still. Here there was only I and she, and the game of chess we burned our eyes with. I moved my queen 2 squares across, in front of my pawn. That move in front of the pawn, that spells checkmate after 4 moves. This position for the queen directly crosses her king. You would wish time moved like a horse, free to make swift turns any time, right, Uncle? She said, bearing Uncle in her words. A proper little kid, I thought. Where will I go after this park? I said, my first question of the day. She smiled and looked at a passing cloud. Nowhere and everywhere, she said, then returned her gaze at the chess pieces, the open layout of the early game, assessing her next turn. You see, time is like a sandcastle. You build it as best you can, of course, with the pointy things, some walls to block the serve, maybe a moat to catch and drain the seawater. I love moats. Maybe add some flags, some rocks, cone things, and you have a pretty little castle. Then, as the day passes, wind picks up, sun persists, and the sand would, grain by grain, dissolve from the castle and back to the beach. And you will go back to the beach, to nowhere and everywhere, she said. Again, moving the same horse forward, I crossed my bishop to the other side, eyeing the clueless pawn guarding her king. Pushing her horse to the open field gives her flexibility in both offense and defense. I must be wary. Then I thought of my skin disintegrating, turning to grains of sand blown by the wind. My blood would leak like a broken vase, squeezing its way to the earth. I thought of my words, my expressions evaporating into thin air. I imagined my brain turn into a blob, a bubble, my mind, my ideas, and my desires bursting with a pop. Nowhere and everywhere? A bit of rage swelled in me. I wanted to answer the child in frustration, but I caught my tongue before anger took over. She only held 3 answers to my questions. Any more than that, I imagined my limbs claimed by the surf of seawater. It was an idea, that furnace inside me, to reduce my most intimate being into nothing more than a grain of dirt. I think time is like a book, a keeper of memories, intellect and politics. It is a journal of love and passion. Time is a capsule we take to remedy our lost celebrations, to strengthen our withering resolution, I said. She held the pawn in front of her king and played it along her fingers like a coin. Ah, then it's a book. There must be a library of them, a place to keep all these passions, these ideas and memories, she said, all the while catching her pawn, clapping and jumping on her bench. Yes, exactly, a library, I answered in quick response. Alas, if such a library exists for each and every passionate being that walked your earth, then it would fill a portion of the universe. That's fantastic. Libraries serve a purpose, though. And where will it be? This library has to be accessible to everyone, right? She said, holding a wide, winning smile. I'm one move away from saying checkmate. She held her pawn in her hand and continued to play with it. Her third move waited. You should know where it is, or in fact make one, I said. My eyes kept at her pawn. She twiddled it and rolled it, turned it and flipped it, how cigar makers would. I should, she asked. You could, I replied. A kind breeze would pay a visit, and while it wallowed in the caves of my ears, the hairs of my skin rose. How walking late at night would when a shadow walks from behind. But then I remembered, wind only stayed in my memory. I could, she continued. Still, she played with the pawn on her palm. Of course you could. You could do anything you want, but you just sit here on your beach playing chess, and when are you making your move? I said. A bigger grin covered her little face. There, I realized the mistake I've made. There went my second chance to know the secrets of the universe. So is chess a game of strategy, planning, or is chess a game of time? How about chess as a game of decision-making? Choosing the best moves, adjusting to each consequence the board throws at you, she said. Can I just keep my memories, the great ones, even the bad ones? Just let me keep any image I have of my life. Can I keep them? I said. Her eyes closed as though fulfilling a last wish. I don't see why not. They're yours. Keep them as long as you like, she said. Placed the pawn back in front of the king, then moved a different pawn, the one farthest from the action, nudged it a bit, and that was her move. She held her gaze at me, opened the board for my turn, and wandered her eyes further behind where I sat, further and above. My queen, supported by my bishop from a diagonal point, took the fastest way straight. There, as it took down the helpless pawn, faced the king. Checkmate, I said. I said it, the right words to say when the opponent is out of moves. There the match ended and my questions answered. The little girl stood and stretched out her arms as if woken from a delectable nap. This is fantastic, she said. She turned at the stone path that leads to the end of the island. The sand rain, with the pawn in her fingers, measured the distance with one eye closed. You can ask me one more question if you like, she said. Then crouched at the sand and with her pawn began to draw a horse. I thought about it for a moment. If I had one more question, what would it be? I searched for the answer myself. Turned around to look at the island, wondered at the palm trees, at the colorless sky, at the waveless beach. I coursed through the grains of sand and watched it pass through the gaps of my fingers. What is the purpose of my life? I said. A burst of laughter came out of her, as though a giant balloon exploding from the hands of this child. She fell on her knees, slapping the sides of her thighs, and then topples onto the sand, then to her side, as though feathers tickling her feet. Oh my, people, she said. Want to play again? Then you can go, she added. The pieces were set, and I, again, took the first turn. She moved her horse, and I followed with my queen. Again she moved her horse, and I placed my bishop. how it was all placed earlier. Time is like a sandcastle, she said.